I reread the Maze Runner series so you don't have to. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. This is part of my Revisiting as an Adult series, and now that the Harry Potter series is done, now on to the Maze Runner. You can watch the other videos in this series here and check them out, they're pretty good. But back to the Maze Runner. I love this series, I love the films, but this book series reread definitely dampened my ratings for the books. I still love the series as a whole, as a collective media story, for lack of a better phrase, but it was a disappointing reread. I didn't really like it. But before I explain why, subscribe and tell us what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like this video. For the scores, Maze Runner gets the following: plot 57, characters 38, emotional impact 30, pacing 65, writing style 60, themes 20, uniqueness 95, book cover 20, overall score 45.25. The whole series actually averages a score of 59.1, FYI, so it will get better. I didn't enjoy this reread as much as I thought I would. It's weird because I really like this series and absolutely love the films, but the thing with reread, especially when it comes to a weaker entry, you're comparing it to an already finished or a mostly ongoing series, which definitely skews one's judgment, and I'm definitely feeling that right now. But there's also the fact that the series has very successful films. It was part of the young adult fantasy trilogy in the early 2010s of Maze Runner, Twilight as well. So let me add the fourth one: Maze Runner, Twilight, Hunger Games, and Divergent. And if you've watched the films, you know that in Maze Runner there's a lot of guns and actions and a lot of adrenaline pumping scenes from heights, and we get all sorts. And it was good, but that actually doesn't translate into the books. It's quite different. What you're gonna find out with this is that Hollywood did their thing. Hollywood sometimes fucks up a series with writing and all sorts of other BS, but for Maze Runner, I definitely elevated it. But let me get more into the book. The beginning of the book is strange, but still good. The thing I found most strange is the acceptance, mainly through Chuck's dialogue, of the crazy situation the Gladers find themselves in. I can relate to Thomas's frustration about not getting answers, because no one was willing to provide any. It took away from the book because it didn't add to the mystery of the story. So the first 33% of the book is frustrating due to lack of answers. The Gladers want to maintain order, and that order has kept things ticking for 2 years approximately. It's a slower pace, but Thomas enters the maze and tries to get answers, and he's just living day by day until he tries to save Albie Amino, and that's when things start to pick up. When he's getting chased by the Grievous. Before I knew it, I devoured 50 pages and things had really started to get rolling, finally. We still haven't got answers, but at least something's happening. This book doesn't work for me because all the questions that Tom has, which are all reasonable, are 1, not answered, or 2, Dashner's writing and execution hasn't really intrigued me. For example, quote, are they changed because they want to go to their old life? Or is it because they're so depressed at realizing their old life was no better than what we have now? This quote was a question posed by one of the Gladers when they were talking about getting one's memories back after being stung by the Grievous. We learned that a few of the Gladers have actually been stung, but they won't talk about the memories they've recaptured at all. And it's weird. That whole dynamic is just weird. This whole reread of this book was extremely disappointing. I was reading it, I was like, and I think it's because this is more on the younger side of YA, and I'm in my late 20s now, and I'm getting more into the adult fantasy, more epic fantasy, and so reading the younger YA book seems a bit off. Moving on to Scorched Trials. Here are my ratings for Scorched Trials. Plot 40, characters 44, emotional impact 38, pacing 62, writing style 50, themes 20, uniqueness 70, book cover 10, overall score 41.6. This book starts off very weird, but I like the change of pace once Jensen, aka Ratman, is introduced and kind of tells the crew what is going on. I really preferred the movie version that didn't have all of this. And this book from now, so this book and the next one, is where Hollywood takes over and they just rewrite a good chunk of this book. And they needed to, and I totally agreed with it. Sometimes Hollywood does make things better. And this series is a living testament of that. It took the source material, cliched it quite a bit, and delivered a better product than the source material. But what's going on? Wicked are fucking with everyone's mind still, and now the Gladiators have to make it across the Scorch and make it to a safe haven. They have to do this by going north, and they have 2 weeks to get to the safe haven. Along the way, they meet up with people, fight other people, and meet up with Group B, which was the girl maze, which Aris was a part of. This line from Thomas summed up the whole shenanigans perfectly well. Could this be any different from what they put us through in the maze? There, we were trapped inside walls with everything we need to survive. Now we have nothing holding us in, but no way to survive unless we go where they told us to. Isn't that called irony or something like that? At this stage, they haven't got their memories back, but they have more things to worry about. We're now in the real world, and the group have to deal with the extreme climate and people infected with the flare. The beginning of the book, again, and the beginning and the ending of the book I didn't really like so much. The best part is the middle, by far, and this happens once we link up with George and Brenda. Speaking of my crush, Brenda, I love Brenda in the books and the movies. I forgot how forward she is in the books, but then she does have the flair. Or does she? Okay, she doesn't. She doesn't have the flair. She's lying. She's also wicked. Her and George, everyone's wicked. This whole thing's orchestrated to the max, and we will learn that in later books. But her and Thomas's chemistry is what carries the middle section of the book, and is by far the best part of the book, and maybe the series. I like the alone time to get information from Brenda. The middle part with Brenda and Thomas is the best because I think Dashner writes best when it's mainly like this. He didn't care for the other crew members, like the side and like peripheral characters, especially the ones in the Glade. Neither does Thomas, and neither do I. And I think it's set up that way, but whenever they're in a group, it's whatever. It's mainly just Thomas, Mino, and Newt. And sometimes Frypan will, throw his opinions in there. But when it was just Brenda and Thomas, and we're just walking through, deserted, scorched civilization, it was just way better than anything. Anyway, we eventually link up with Teresa, and there's a whole thing going there. Thomas basically ends up with 2 girlfriends. He ends up choosing Teresa, but that didn't go down so well. The group, of course, get to the safe haven after a lot of betrayal and secret subplots. These guys are stupid yet again. Once Wicked came back for them in the Berg, they really thought that they were safe. The death cure is similar to the Scorch Trials. The beginning is the middle is the strongest part, and the ending is weak. But here's a breakdown of the rating. Plot 45, character 60, emotional impact 53, pacing 69, writing style 40, themes 39, uniqueness 45, book cover 96, overall score 53.45. One thing that is really weird with this book is the part where in the Wicked compound, they haven't got their memories erased. And when I say they, I mean Mino, Thomas, and Newt, because Brenda saves them and now they're on a mission. But everything so far has pointed us to the fact that Wicked either act swiftly if something has gone awry that they didn't plan, or, and this is basically the arc and sub-arcs of the series, Wicked lets you question things you can't control and lets you do actions it wants you to do. So when the foursome are on their mission, the whole time I'm just thinking, Wicked wanted this. They're in control of everything. But one of the good things about this book is finally seeing functioning civilization. It felt weird and it was really good, and it was good to be in a city like with people, and hearing Thomas's inner thoughts about it was pretty cool too. But Thomas hadn't had much time to think about what the world outside of Wicked's control would be like. But now they were actually going to face it. His nerves lit up with anticipation and butterflies filled his stomach. He was about to enter uncharted territory. It was pretty cool being back in civilization, but again, one of the major holes with this series is that the Gladers who've got their memory back, we don't hear anything about the world and old civilizations and their past, and it really proves the detriment to this whole thing, Teresa included, because, due to her betrayal, Thomas is struggling to forgive her and talk to her or just get back to normal things with her. I don't know, it was just weird. Newt knowing he will die and giving that letter to Thomas, and later all the things that transpired with them going to see Newt, and then Thomas discovering Newt once the city had fallen or been compromised. It hadn't quite fallen. Actually, no, it'd fallen because the cranks were biding their time. That was wild. The way the city fell was actually quite weird. Well, weird in a good way, because obviously with the flare you slowly start to lose your mind, but the way those infected were able to organize themselves was just quite something. I won't lie, the books did this better than the films in terms of displaying the flare, because in the books in the films it's just, straight up zombie, instant, boom, you've gone mad. But in the books it's a gradual build up, and this is probably the thing Dashner done the best, and gotta give him his props for that. I like Galley's comeback in the book, but I didn't like the right arm. I actually hate the right arm in the book series. They are just absolutely crap. I preferred the split in the movie, and let me tell you what I mean. In the books, the right arm are basically a blend of the right arm in the films plus the resistance that were outside the city walls in the film. And in the books, the right arm definitely acts more like the resistance in the films than they do the right arm in the films. It's all about revenge, and it's not about actually saving anyone. There's no bigger plan. The end of this book was weird also. Everything just felt too all over the place. I didn't care for Teresa's death, but I did like the memo that Chancellor Paige set out, where she talks about the backup plan for the immunes and how George and Brenda were her partners in the plan. And I like that once we get to the Fever Code, we learn more about Chancellor Paige. Her actions don't seem surprising at all. So that's the main trilogy that we got films with, and the films were epic and they made a lot of money, and I rewatch them all the time and they're great. Now we get into the other two in the series that don't have films but are very substantial books. The next two are the best in the series. So first we got The Kill Order. My ratings for it are plot 38, characters 80, emotional impact 70, pacing 70, writing style 60, themes 54, uniqueness 40, book cover 40, overall score 60. We get introduced to new characters in this book, and I like them way more than the Maze Runner characters, like the main trilogy. They have the advantage of having their memories, so their backstory is valid and we get to see more of it. And also we get a mix of adults and kids, and it just makes it a lot better. However, this book really starts to fall apart once the group splits. Once they hear the singing in the forest and the men go to investigate, everything falls apart. Mainly because of the ending and the fact that we didn't actually get any sort of reconciliation with the group. We never got to see them collectively again. That was the last time, and I absolutely hated that. I like the format like Stranger Things, where everyone has their hypothesis and they go and test it and they come back with new information, and then there's the big link up plan. Like, you always need a link up. Do not give me a link up, This book really fails at really driving through that apocalyptic feel. At the start of the apocalyptic where everything kind of falls apart. It fails in that because the flashbacks are too spaced apart. and is not the main driver of the story. It didn't help that the only time that we got flashbacks was when Mark, who's the main character, happened to be passed out or sleeping. So naturally, we only get to see it when he isn't awake. But due to the fact that stuff is happening in the book's present, Mark can't just be like always knocked out or sleeping. But it's a shame because the flashbacks of how the gang came together and some of the things they had to overcome was actually very well done. Extremely well done. And to be honest, it would have been best if the whole book was actually about that, as opposed to it being about Dee Dee, aka Teresa's kind of story and how she came to be. But we get a lot of answers in this book about how, the post-flares coalition in Alaska tried to control the population and all that good stuff, and how things just fell apart very, very quickly. We got to see the slow burn of the virus with the main protagonist and Mark and others, and Dashna did this just excellently. The whole "my head hurts" declaration is horrific and very well done. Alright, the Fever Code. This is the prequel to the whole series. Although we get it 5 books in, it shows what life was like growing up for those who had to go into the maze. It also provides insight into Wicked's operation, as the book mostly takes place within the compound. One thing that's always just crazy is how Wicked are able to hide away all the big things from the kids, even though they go around wandering around the complex. Also, the manipulation in this book was at crazy levels. Everyone is elaborate and everything, and I mean everything, is a variable. Here are my ratings. Plot 70, character 65, emotional impact 70, pacing 55, writing style 55, themes 65, uniqueness 60, book cover 20, overall score 62.5. This is the best book in the series, just by a smidge. Again, I rated it more during my initial read of it a few years ago, but it is what it is. I'm not sure about my feelings of this book. I love that we got this environment, and I loved seeing everyone grow up, but I don't know, I think the biggest thing is just the mystery around Teresa and her betrayal again. It's a running theme, and just if she did it, if she didn't, it was just, I was just so conflicted. Newt's prologue at the start was just really quite something. James Dashner really did his thing with prologues and epilogues in this series, which I definitely appreciated. You know what? That reminds me. This is my big thing about why I feel so weird about the book. It's because it changes the actions, and apparently this was intentional. This changes the actions and how we view things that happened in the main trilogy. And I don't think it was a good way. For example, we see that Thomas and Teresa, we see their relationship, their friendship. They grow up together, they finally meet after, a few years in isolation. They get implanted with the telepathic thing, device thing in their heads. For the things they had to do together and how close they were. When Dashna wrote the Death Cure, and Teresa got her memories back, that should have taken over everything. Her life with Thomas and everything they've been through and how close they were should have overwritten everything, and she should have been able to get Thomas to trust her. And it's weird because I don't think Dashna actually, it seems at least that he didn't actually factor this in, because the Fever Code was released in 2016 and the Death Cure was released 5 years earlier. I don't think it was planned. And I think this is what happens when things aren't planned. And if it was planned, it wasn't executed well. I love the callbacks and just the small details in this book, especially when it comes to Wicked secrets. Thomas and Newt, for example, saw the Scorched Trial monsters as kids one day when they were kind of poking around everywhere. It's one of the times where Thomas actually got close to learning one of the bigger things about Wicked, but he was too scared to investigate, and plus they were on a mission to do something else. Dr. Page / Chancellor Page, her bombshell about infecting everyone because Chancellor Anderson, I believe his name was, wants to end the Maze Runner trials early and everything was just crazy. And she even got the 4 sort of chosen prospects to kill everyone that was infected. The torturing during the renaming of the children, also tough, very tough. It's a crazy book. It's a crazy book, and I think the secrets of just the crazy secrets from like all the women in this series, from Teresa to Paige to Brenda, is that you can't trust anyone. Everyone is a company woman through and through. You just cannot trust anyone. One of the things that makes this book infuriating and this series infuriating, I don't think it actually adds to the book. Here's a playlist to see other reviews from other books that I've done in this channel. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.